let's just go ahead and jump in and let's talk about this. What are we starting with? Are we starting with Bryce Young? Or are we starting with what's up first?
Yeah, so we are going to start with Bryce Young. And one
One
of the earliest bit of newses that came out was our coach had a very lofty comparison for our boy Bryce Young. He says it confirmed what we know and thinking and already knew, that he has a level of football IQ that is on par with Peyton Manning. And this is really kind of made the rounds. A lot of people were talking about this, but then a lot of people also had a problem with it, saying that it was a little bit too much of a lofty comparison. To me, I think it's perfect because the reason that you draft a 5'10" and a half, 195-pound quarterback is because of the off the charts IQ. So this is not crazy to me. This is not weird. It's not too much of a bad comparison. I actually love it, man. And
yeah,
I
that's
think
exactly why you draft him. That was his
Right.
asset.
100%.
That was what he was sold as.
But here's the thing, like with him saying that, doesn't he have to say that? Like no matter what you truly think of him, you have to say that.
He didn't
There's
have to
no
say
way you
that
draft.
guy.
No,
He didn't
there's
have to
no
say
way.
Peyton Manning.
There is no way you draft this guy on the basis of his IQ in football and do not say something like this.
Right, but he didn't have to say that player.
Right. You didn't
He could
have
have picked
to.
somebody else.
He could have said, here's the thing. He could have avoided comparisons altogether. We've seen them do that in the past, right? He could have said, listen, I'm not going to compare him to anybody else, but I'll tell you, his football IQ is incredible. It's one of the best that I've seen. You know, that it could be as simple as that. But the fact that he did say Peyton Manning, I mean, listen, I agree. I think that this is the reason that this guy was drafted was his ability to make quick decisions that most of the time turns out to be the right decision. He's accurate. He's very he's on point. I don't know how else to say it. So I mean, when you talk about his football IQ, I think that it's not hard to look at the parallel between a guy like Peyton Manning and Bryce Young. The biggest the people that are going to have the biggest quarrel with that is going to be the size difference between the two of those guys. And the fact
but
that
he's just saying intellect there, right?
Sure. But at the same time, you know, where Peyton Manning had a bit of a benefit is he had the intellect and the size, right? And I think that's where people are probably talking about this not being a great comparison because, in all honesty, they're going to be completely two separate styles of play. To be fair.
Well, I heard Chris Sims say this when he was talking about quarterbacks. He said, "Look, everybody in the league is great." Right. He said, all these guys are great athletes. They're great. You know, I mean, look at the offensive linemen are great athletes. He said, but the elite players have they have at least one trait that is elite. Right. Is when he looks at these kind of these talents coming out, it's like, all right. So with Josh Allen, it was his arm strength. Right. It's like this arm is better than even the regular quarterbacks in the league. Right. I think that Bryce Young's elite trait is this. That's what we've been told. It's like, if it's not his arm strength, it's not his size, it's not his whatever. This is the elite trait where he is his study habits, all of this. And the one thing I do have, and maybe I'm already going into Papa Bear, protect Bryce Young mode.
Do it. You should.
Yeah.
But I get like the people that are like, oh, well, we should make this comparison. Well, you know what? They said the same shit about Andrew Luck. Nobody's crying about that. And do you remember when Tony Dungy, now this one was after the fact, so I don't know if it might be the best analogy, but Tony Dungy comes out, man, it was probably 2 years ago, a year and a half. You remember that comment he said the first day of practice and Andrew Luck's audibling at the line and doing all this shit. And he's like, I'd never seen a rookie do anything like this. This is why we drafted Bryce Young.
Yes.
This is what his superpower is. That's why it's not his size. It's not his strength. It's his elite trait, his understanding of the football game and that quick mental twitch.
Hey, here's one other piece that I'll add to this. Bryce Young has the potential to be better than Peyton Manning because Peyton Manning, his only elite trait was his IQ as well. Like he could throw the ball, and I'm not saying he couldn't throw the ball deep, but it wasn't elite arm talent, right? The dude wasn't like corking out 70-yard bombs.
Now, he threw a duck
Right.
all the time. Remember them
Right.
ducky passes he always threw?
Right. And so
Yeah.
when you look at the difference, here's the difference between Peyton Manning and Bryce Young. And this is why I don't think that's a good comparison, to be honest with you, is Peyton Manning had to be a statue in the pocket. And Bryce Young is going to be able to be shifty and get outside of, escape pressure. And so there's going to be pros and cons to both of these guys. And I think Bryce Young has the potential to be a better, I think he has more elite traits outside of his height.
Yeah, and Tony, we should defend him. We should defend him. Even though he hasn't played a snap, we need to get defensive about Bryce Young. It's because of what we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
The disrespect is already real. Okay, so you already know, we already built it up a bunch talking about it. So let's just get into it, right?
Well,
go ahead, Greg. Go ahead.
Let me be clear real quick, because I see stuff in the chat room right now. I am behind Bryce Young, and I want Bryce Young to do well, and I think that he can. I'm 100% behind him. That doesn't mean I don't need to see it also.
Of
I
course.
still need to see it, but I'm behind him 100%.
Well, you can Greg, you can point out the hypocrisy as well, right? You can point out the fact that everybody was jumping on the Bryce train to be the number one pick in the NFL draft, right? Everybody, every single media pundit, outside of the select few that were saying CJ Stroud was going to be number one, you can still be a bit, lukewarm on the idea of Bryce Young being the franchise quarterback, and at the same time calling out the hypocrisy of the sports media for literally the moment he becomes a Carolina Panther, having things like we're about to talk about happen.
Yeah, and we're going to need to support him. Because, and it's like what CK just alluded to, this entire draft process, as we were breaking down the differences between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, whenever you listen to the people that get paid to comb over the film and give their reviews of all the players, you almost unanimously, to a man, except for Chris Sims and a certain other few, they said that Bryce Young unanimously has the best film out of any quarterback in this year's class, that he's miles ahead of everyone else. When it comes to his process and defenses, making checks at the line of scrimmage, his evasion of pressure, the young man does everything at the very highest level, right? Then to top it all off, the Carolina Panthers, even at the end of the season, were still contending for the NFC South crown. So it's not like this football team is a dumpster fire, bottom of the barrel football team.